Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something just a little bit reckless. We're time traveling straight into the belly of the beast, deep into the heart of the Roman Empire. Picture this: your eyes crack open to a thin shaft of daylight, slicing through a filthy dust-coated window. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress in a cramped insula apartment that you share with 5 other people, none of whom seem to believe in personal space or deodorant. The air is a heavy soup of smoke from nearby cook fires, street sewage, and the sour tang of unwashed humanity. You haven't even stood up yet, and already you're wondering how long you're going to last. Spoiler alert, not long. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You sit up disoriented, your modern brain trying to process the sheer density of life happening all around you. Outside your rickety door, someone's yelling in Latin, probably a vendor or someone who's misplaced their goat. You want a coffee? Not happening. Rome doesn't know coffee yet. What they do have is Posca, of vinegary wine dilution that tastes like regret. But before you can even think about food or drink, you've got to get out of this room. The floor creaks dangerously beneath your feet as you shuffle to the communal hallway. You hope to use the latrine, unfortunately, so do all your neighbors. There's no toilet paper, just a shared sponge on a stick. Yes, it's exactly as bad as it sounds. As you make your way outside, you're immediately bombarded by the chaos of a Roman morning. Picture the worst rush hour you've ever seen, only replace the cars with oxen beggars and a man dragging a cart full of dead pigs. The narrow streets are clogged with people yelling, selling, and generally not caring if you get trampled. Sidewalks optional. Sanitation, what's that? You quickly learn to breathe through your mouth and step carefully, because yes, some of that mud is not mud. Historians still argue whether the average Roman citizen felt pride or misery walking through these filthy streets, but one thing's for sure: you're not proud. You're overwhelmed. And you're also starting to itch. Could be fleas. Could be lice. Could be both. Rome was like that, lavish on the surface, crawling underneath. You pass a street barber shaving a customer with a rusty blade, while another man screams nearby from an infected wound. Nobody seems to notice. Nobody ever does. Now let's talk clothes. You're wrapped in a cheap tunic that smells faintly of sweat and old olive oil. It's itchy, drab, and utterly impractical. Romans didn't believe in comfy joggers or stretchable fabrics. And sandals. More like stiff leather soles tied together with hope and twine. Your feet are already sore. And it's only sunrise. On your way to the local market, you almost get hit by a chamber pot being emptied from a window. Welcome to Rome, where upper floors mean upper hand, and that includes dumping last night's waste directly into the street. Ducking out of the way, you catch a glimpse of a street performer juggling flaming sticks. Impressive. Until you realize he's not doing it for fun, he's doing it for bread. Literally. People toss him crusts of old bread like he's a pigeon. You hear the clang of hammers in the distance and a chorus of shouting children. One grabs your coin pouch and runs. You hesitate, then chase him down a narrow alley that smells of cat urine and roasted meat, though you can't quite tell if the latter is actually meat. When you finally corner the little pickpocket, he drops the pouch and vanishes into the maze of humanity. You're lucky. Others aren't. Roman thieves were quick, small, and sometimes organized in gangs. The urban poor, called the capi dei censi, often lived in such poverty that theft wasn't just temptation, it was survival. And speaking of survival, don't even think about calling for help. The Roman police force, the cohortes urbanae, exists technically, but they're more likely to show up after the fact, and even then only if someone important complains. Which, let's face it, you're not. You're just another smelly face in a smelly crowd. Now, if you think you're getting some breakfast, think again. Romans didn't really do breakfast. Maybe you snag a piece of cold porridge or a few figs if you're lucky. Mostly you're just trying not to pass out from the combination of heat hunger and sensory overload. The sun's already burning the rooftops, and the stone streets radiate it back like an oven. You start sweating. You haven't even done anything yet. You're just existing, and it's exhausting. Oh, and about those rumors of Rome being clean because of its baths. Not yet, not for you. You smell like the inside of a grain sack, and your tunic is sticking to your back. But don't worry, we'll get to bathhouses soon, and trust me, that's a whole other adventure. As you wander through the city, you finally glimpse the mighty Colosseum in the distance. Majestic, towering, a symbol of Rome's power and, well, bloodlust. You'll be seeing more of that later too. But for now, you press onward trying to blend in. Spoiler, you don't. You walk like a modern tourist, you flinch at every shout, and you're clearly underprepared. A vendor tries to sell you what he claims is imported silk. It's actually dyed goat hair. You nod politely and walk away pretending to know what you're doing. A few steps later, a priest of some obscure local cult splashes water at your feet and mutters a blessing. You're not sure whether to say thank you or run. Welcome to Rome, a city where you're either being blessed, robbed, or accidentally recruited into a temple ritual. Sometimes, all three at once. It's not even noon, and already you're tired, smelly, disoriented, and hungry. You're also wondering why anyone romanticizes ancient Rome in the first place. Sure, the architecture's impressive, and the roads are straight. But the rest, a mess. A fascinating, chaotic, historical mess. And you, my friend, are just barely hanging on. You finally manage to stumble away from the endless parade of carts, animals, shouting vendors, and pickpockets. Your feet ache, your mouth is dry, and your skin feels sticky in places you didn't even know could get sticky. But now, you're headed somewhere the Romans took great pride in. The public bathhouse. Sounds relaxing, right? Spoiler, it's not. You arrive at the Thermae, one of the larger bath complexes, open to the general public. From the outside, it's a marvel of Roman engineering, arched entryways, stone colonnades, and water channels humming beneath the ground. Inside, however, it's a circus. A humid, slippery, half-naked circus. You're met with a wall of heat and an even thicker wall of human scent. You inhale steam sweat oil and something suspiciously like mildew. Everyone around you is either very naked or almost naked, and for reasons you don't fully understand, extremely confident about it. A servant hands you a strigil, a curved metal tool used to scrape dirt and oil off the skin. There is no soap, no shampoo, just oil. You smear it on your already sweaty body, then attempt to scrape it off without flinching as a stranger gets a little too friendly with their elbow in your personal space. No one warns you about the blisters. The hot stones in the caldarium can scald your soles if you're not careful. And the frigidarium, the cold plunge pool, is colder than your ex's last text. You go from boiling to freezing in 30 seconds, which your body interprets as an act of war. Still, the baths are where Romans socialized, gossiped, debated politics, and even closed business deals. It's less like a spa and more like a smoky, half-nude version of a boardroom crossed with a middle school locker room. Historians still argues whether Roman bathhouses were primarily for hygiene or more for networking. And in your case, it's clearly the latter, since you leave not feeling particularly clean, but very well acquainted with a man named Lucius, who won't stop talking about his cousin's new mosaic. Speaking of hygiene, let's talk about how not hygienic this whole situation really is. You notice the walls are stained with moisture, the water isn't exactly crystal clear, and you're not entirely sure whether that floating object is a leaf or a health hazard. You want to leave, but Lucius insists you stay for the final step, a massage with scented oil. Which sounds amazing until you realize the masseur is using the same oil on every person poured from a communal jar that's been sitting in the sun. You think about athletes' foot skin infections and whatever else lives on communal benches in a society where hand sanitizer hasn't even been invented yet. Still, you've earned some respect now. Surviving a Roman bathhouse is no small feat. You even manage to swap a few words in broken Latin, mostly nodding and laughing at jokes you don't understand. But hey, you're blending in. Sort of. After you dry off with what can only be described as a stiff communal rag, you get dressed again, still damp, still itchy, and step outside into the sunlight. You think maybe now I'll feel refreshed. But instead, you feel exposed. Roman baths weren't relaxing so much as ritualistic. And now that you've completed your oily, awkward rite of passage, it's time to face the street again. By now, the city is fully awake, and the heat has doubled. You walk with a bit more confidence, but you're constantly aware of the smells radiating from your tunic. You pass a baker's stall and catch the scent of fresh bread, finally something good. You approach stomach growling and exchange a few coins for a loaf so hard it could double as a weapon. You gnaw at it like a desperate rodent. It's not bad, but it's far from your sourdough fantasy. Then something interesting happens. You spot a small crowd gathered around a man ranting dramatically while gesturing toward the sky. He's a street philosopher, one of many. He's shouting about the decline of Roman morals and how Jupiter will strike down the wicked. Another man nearby counters with a different theory involving Saturn fate and goats. You try to follow, but it's all very abstract and very loud, and a little unsettling. One guy in the corner has carved a symbol into his arm and is whispering something about Mithras. Fringe religions were everywhere in Rome, and while mainstream worship revolved around gods like Mars and Venus, cults like Mithraism or the followers of Isis were gaining ground, often meeting in secret. Historians still argue whether these mystery cults were a threat to Roman unity or just a symptom of spiritual exhaustion. You edge away feeling just a bit more confused than before, and nearly trip over a young boy chasing a rat with a stick. He looks up, grins, and runs off. You're sweating again. You head toward a fountain to wash your hands, because that bread left crumbs, and your fingers still smell like olive oil and regret. The water is flowing cool and clear, piped in from distant mountains by one of Rome's impressive aqueducts. But before you drink, pause. Remember that lead Roman pipes were made of it. There's ongoing scholarly debate about whether widespread lead exposure contributed to mental decline in the upper classes. You figure one sip won't kill you. Probably. You lean against a wall exhausted and catch sight of a passing litter, one of those fancy chairs carried by 4 miserable-looking slaves. Inside sits a woman fanning herself draped in layers of silk and jewelry. You blink, and for a moment you imagine what it must be like to be her. Rich, pampered, untouchable, and completely unaware of how lucky you are to have someone else do the walking for you. But that dream fades fast. A gust of wind blows dust into your eyes, and you cough. Someone nearby sneezes violently. No one says bless you. Because Rome is loud, gritty, indifferent. It swallows the weak and humbles the hopeful. You've survived a Roman bathhouse, which makes you tougher than you were this morning. But the city, it's just getting started. You pull your tunic tighter, scratch your ankle, and start walking again. Because this empire isn't going to pity you. It's going to keep moving, keep shouting, and keep throwing chamber pots out the window whether you're ready or not. By the time you reach the Forum, the epicenter of Roman public life, the sun is high overhead and your sandals are now officially chafing. The Forum is everything you imagine. Majestic columns, marble statues, bustling stalls, men in togas, debating in loud theatrical tones, but it's also louder, more chaotic, and about 10 times more confusing than any history book prepared you for. You've walked into what feels like a political rally, open-air courtroom flea market, and aggressive gossip column all rolled into one. Everyone here seems to know where they're going and what they're doing, except for you. You try to look casual as you wander through clusters of toga-wrapped senator slaves, balancing scrolls and merchants shouting about olives dates or miracle salves made from crushed beetles. You pause to admire a bronze statue only to get bumped hard in the back by a man leading a donkey carrying amphorae of oil. No apology. Just a snort and the slap of leather sandals marching onward. Welcome to the Forum, where the traffic never stops and manners are optional. You take a breath while you try. The air smells like a mix of incense from the nearby Temple of Vesta, sweat-crushed herbs, and... Is that donkey again? Yeah, that's donkey. As you step carefully over a suspicious puddle, you hear a heated debate echoing from a nearby rostra platform. A senator with a booming voice is arguing for grain subsidies, while another calls him soft and accuses him of being a Greek sympathizer. The crowd alternates between cheering and booing like it's a gladiator match. Historians still argue whether Roman political discourse was truly about policy or mostly just performance. And today it's hard to tell the difference. Everyone's gesturing wildly, shouting in rhetorical flourishes, and dropping references to Virgil and Cicero like they're gossiping about last night's dinner party. You just want a quiet place to sit, but there's no such thing in the Forum. Benches are taken. Steps are full. Even the shady patches are crowded with elderly philosophers loudly lamenting the youth of today. You shuffle toward the edge of the plaza and spot a stall selling writing supplies, wax tablets, styluses ink made from soot and vinegar. You watch as a scribe, likely hired by someone illiterate, takes dictation from a woman in expensive robes. She rattles off a letter at rapid-fire pace while the scribe carves each syllable carefully into the wax. You lean in, curious. She's apparently suing her neighbor over a stolen chicken. The scribe doesn't blink. Just another day in Rome. You try asking a question in Latin. Something simple, where's the nearest temple? The vendor blinks and then rattles off directions at warp speed, mixing in slang gestures and what might have been an insult. You nod like you understood every word, then walk off in the opposite direction to save face. You're starting to suspect that your high school Latin class didn't cover half the words being hurled around here. Suddenly, a group of children race past you, chasing a small dog with something tied to its back. You catch snippets of laughter and a shouted curse from a nearby stall keeper. You smile despite yourself. Some things never change. But before you can enjoy the moment, your stomach growls again. That stale bread earlier didn't cut it. A food vendor waves at you, gesturing to a tray of what look like meatballs. You buy two and take a tentative bite. The outside is crispy. The inside, unclear, tastes like mystery meat with a hint of herbs. And maybe fish. It's topped with a splash of garum, that infamous Roman fermented fish sauce. It hits your tongue like a punch to the taste buds. Salty, funky, and weirdly addictive. You chew cautiously. Somehow, it's not the worst thing you've eaten today. Still, your modern digestive system is sounding alarms. You finish the last bite, then wander into a quieter part of the Forum near a small garden patch, where older men recline on stone benches and trade philosophical insights. One quotes Seneca. Another rolls his eyes and mutters something about Epicurus. You try to listen hoping for wisdom, but it devolves into an argument about the moral decay of theater performances. A passing joke about those wild actors earned some knowing laughs. Apparently, Roman theater was as scandalous as it was popular. You take a seat on the edge of a fountain, hoping not to offend any statues, and finally let yourself exhale. You've survived the morning rush, the bathhouse chaos, and the sensory overload of the forum. Just as you start to relax, a man in an official-looking tunic approaches and barks something about a census declaration. You panic, nod awkwardly, and hand him a coin. Wrong move. He stares at it like you've handed him a fish, then marches off muttering. Maybe he wasn't an official. Maybe he just wanted directions. Or maybe he wanted your spot by the fountain. You stand again, trying to make sense of what's happening around you. A group of men walk by in formal togas, their sandals polished and their brows furrowed in the way that says, "We're very important and very late." You overhear something about a Senate vote. Another man rushes past, carrying scrolls so long they're dragging in the dust. A musician strums a lyre badly. A woman swats flies off her figs with the urgency of a general in battle. And you just stand there, one foot slightly blistered, wishing you had a coffee. You check the sky like it might offer answers, but all it offers is more sun. Somewhere, a bell tolls. It might be the hour, or a call to a meeting, or maybe it's just someone banging a pan. Clarity is not Rome's strong suit. As you wander back toward the city's outer alleys, a merchant tries to sell you a carved amulet he swears will protect you from curses. You almost buy it just in case. Another man offers you a chance to bet on a chariot race happening later that week. You decline, still not sure how Roman currency really works. And then there's a street artist sketching mythological scenes on scraps of tile. His Medusa looks oddly like your high school math teacher. You've spent barely half a day in the Roman Empire, and already you've witnessed more contradictions than a philosopher's diary. Wealth paraded beside poverty. Beauty smeared with grime. Glory shouted over the din of chaos. And through it all, you, the time-stranded modern soul, doing your best to look like you belong. You're still chewing on the lingering aftertaste of that garum-drenched mystery meat when your nose twitches again. The smells of the forum are behind you now. But ahead lies something arguably worse, the local Pepina, a Roman fast food joint, where the city's poor and busy get their meals, and the menu is not exactly curated for modern stomachs. You're starving, so you push open the curtain of woven reeds and step inside. The place is dim, noisy, and smells like roasted onions, stale wine, and whatever was scraped off the grill this morning. Inside are a few wooden stools, some stained counters, and a clay oven burning at full tilt. There's no menu, no cheerful server, and certainly no vegan options. Just a tired cook behind a stone counter covered with bubbling pots. You point to one at random. He ladles something into a shallow bowl and slides it toward you. You stare down at your lunch. It's a stew of lentils, chunks of meat that may or may not be mutton, a few boiled vegetables, and of course, more garum. You brace yourself and take a bite. It's gritty hot and oddly comforting, like a casserole made by someone who hates you just a little. You spoon it down quickly, while a man beside you loudly belches and starts picking his teeth with a chicken bone. Appetite neutralized. While you eat, you eavesdrop. The guy at the end of the counter is ranting about a neighbor's illegal rooftop addition that blocked his son. Another customer is arguing that his landlord worships the wrong household gods, and that's why his apartment smells like sulfur. You nod quietly to yourself. Rome, where zoning disputes and divine curses walk hand in hand. You glance at the walls plastered with grime and occasionally scratched with crude graffiti. Some inscriptions are about love, some about politics, some about a man named Gaius, who apparently owes everyone money. Fringe fact archaeologists have found graffiti in Pompeii that reads like ancient Yelp reviews, things like "this place serves bad wine," or Secundus defecated here. It's strangely comforting to know bathroom humor has never gone out of style. As you finish eating, the cook pours you a cup of wine. Except this isn't the rich, velvety kind you might imagine. Roman wine is usually watered down, mixed with herbs, and occasionally thickened with honey or chalk. You sip. It's vinegary and warm. Not terrible. Not great. Just Roman. There's a lively debate among historians over whether the average Roman was mildly buzzed all the time, thanks to the constant consumption of low-grade wine. Based on the looks around this place, you're leaning toward yes. You step back into the daylight with a full stomach and a mild headache, only to be greeted by a chorus of shouting. Something's going on down the street. People are pushing toward a side plaza, eager to see something. You follow the tide and find a wooden platform surrounded by guards. A public punishment. A man, arms bound, stands with his head lowered as a magistrate reads a list of charges. Theft, blasphemy, unpaid debts. The crowd jeers. Suddenly the guards raise whips. You flinch. The first crack sounds like a thunderclap. The man doesn't scream. He just takes it jaw-clenched eyes on the ground. You turn away quickly, your stomach churning. The punishment isn't fatal, just humiliating and painful and completely public. In Rome, justice isn't blind. It's loud, bloody, and something people bring their kids to watch. You move away shaken. A local man catches your eye and shrugs. Shouldn't have stolen figs, he says, then walks off munching on one. You start to understand how desensitized people here have become. In a world without modern law enforcement, the spectacle is the deterrent. That and the knowledge that next time you could be the one tied to the platform. You decide to walk toward the edge of the commercial district, where the crowds thin a bit. A beggar sitting cross-legged on the ground raises a hand. You toss him a coin. He nods, eyes tired, and mutters something you don't catch. Just past him, a small shrine stands on a stone pedestal dedicated to some household god, maybe Laris or Janus. Offerings of fruit coins and herbs sit at its base. Someone's even left a doll. You hesitate, then place your own coin beside it. Can't hurt, right? A little girl runs by chasing a hoop down the alley. Two boys argue over a wooden dice game nearby. Life carries on, even in all this dust and disorder. You watch as an older woman sweeps her doorstep, with a bundle of reeds, her sandals worn to near nothing, her expression focused, deliberate. These tiny rituals, cleaning, worship, gaming, anchor daily life in a city that never stops spinning. You take another turn, walking deeper into a quieter neighborhood. It smells of dried herbs, smoke, and roasted meat. The apartments here are a little sturdier, and you spot a bakery with loaves stacked in a stone window. Your stomach grumbles again. No more stew, maybe later. You notice how people glance at you not suspiciously, just curiously. You're still not blending in, not completely. Your walk is wrong. Your face is probably sunburned already. And you keep flinching at noises most Romans would ignore. A man with a crooked nose and a wax tablet approaches you and asks if you're looking for work. You shake your head. He shrugs and moves on. Employment here is transactional, brutal, and never guaranteed. Builders, haulers, guards, they all work sun up to sundown for barely enough to scrape by. And if you're hurt on the job, too bad. Rome doesn't do workers' comp. As the sun starts its descent, you begin to feel the fatigue in your bones. Not just physical, but existential. The kind that comes from being surrounded by noise pressure and a society built on hierarchy status and relentless activity. You think about how this empire runs on the backs of laborers, on the whims of the elite, on the constant movement of goods, people, prayers, and gossip. And you're just drifting in it, trying to hold your footing. Someone behind you mutters a blessing. and you turn just in time to see another beggar limping past, hand raised toward the shrine you just visited. You watch him pause, then whisper something before continuing on. You breathe in dust, smoke roasted pine nuts, a hint of something floral from a nearby garland shop. Rome is overwhelming, yes, but it's also alive. Every inch of it hums with intention. And while you wouldn't survive long here, part of you can't help but admire how anyone does. You're still walking, but now with a slight limp, your sandal straps are cutting into your ankles, and your calves are threatening to go on strike. You lean against a shaded column, trying to look casual while silently begging your legs not to give out. A few men nearby are gathered in animated conversation, and you catch the word officium duty job obligation. It hits you. If you were really a Roman citizen, or worse, a freed slave or an immigrant, this break you're taking would be a luxury you couldn't afford, because work here isn't optional. Not if you want to eat, not if you want to stay in your crumbling apartment, not if you want to stay off the streets where life expectancy drops faster than a brick from a scaffold. You look around and suddenly start noticing the working class more clearly. The bricklayers with lime dust in their beards, the bakers with soot-streaked arms, the scribes hunched like vultures over their wax tablets, their hands cramping from copying endless legal contracts and shopping lists. No one's smiling. You try to imagine holding down a job in this world. Maybe you'd start at the docks unloading crates of marble or amphorae of wine in the scorching sun, shoulder deep in splinters and salt water. Or maybe you'd end up as a cleaner in one of those luxurious domus homes, scrubbing mosaics while pretending not to hear your patrician boss loudly complaining about how lazy the help is. Or perhaps, and this is the fantasy a lot of people flirted with in the Roman world, you'd become a soldier, a noble legionary, a proud servant of the empire. But the second you imagine yourself in armor, you remember something. You're soft. You like beds. You like hot water. You like not being stabbed. Let's be clear, being a Roman soldier sounds noble. But in practice, you'd be marching 20 miles a day in sandals that barely qualify as shoes, carrying a 40-pound pack, sleeping on the ground, and building a fortified camp every single night. And that's when you're not actually at war. Add to that a strict chain of command, brutal discipline, and frequent punishment for the tiniest mistake, like falling asleep during watch, which could get you flogged or executed, and the dream fades fast. And even if you weren't in the army, most jobs were soul-crushing. If you were literate, congratulations, maybe you'd get hired as a clerk or assistant to a local official. But that meant long hours, low pay, and total invisibility. The only time people noticed scribes was when something went wrong. Misspelled a senator's name on a decree. Congratulations, you've just committed social suicide. Fringe fact. Some Romans were employed full-time as professional mourners, people who were paid to wail loudly at funerals, so it looked like the deceased was deeply loved. You'd smear ashes on your face, beat your chest, and scream like your dog just died, all for a few coins and the hope of another gig next week. It's like acting, but without the snacks or dental insurance. You wander toward the outskirts of a construction site and see a group of workers mixing lime mortar, lifting stones with crude pulleys and trying not to get flattened by falling debris. Safety regulations. Cute idea. Roman construction sites were a maze of collapsing scaffolding, shouted orders, and aching backs. Historians still argue whether skilled laborers earned decent wages or remained stuck in poverty. But judging by the groans echoing from this half-finished bathhouse, it's probably the latter. One of the workers catches you staring and grins through his dirt-caked teeth. "Looking for work?" he asks. You wave him off, trying to look important. He laughs and gets back to hauling bricks in the afternoon sun. You feel guilty for being soft, for not even trying. But then, a man nearby coughs up something wet and red, leans against the wall, and keeps working anyway. You decide to keep walking. As you head back toward the city center, you pass a group of street performers. One man's balancing on a rolling barrel while juggling clay pots. Another's playing a reed pipe badly. A third is miming what looks like a soldier being attacked by bees. They're not paid in coins, but in scraps of bread and second glances. Life as a performer here rough. Unless you've got a patron, some wealthy Roman with a taste for art, you're hustling for every bite. You sit on a stone step for a moment and try to collect yourself. How do people keep this up day after day, and then you remember they don't? The average life expectancy in ancient Rome hovers around 30 to 40 years, and even that's a luxury. If you're poor, overworked, and one bad injury away from losing your income, you don't get to grow old gracefully. You get old fast, or you just don't get old at all. You spot a woman walking by with a woven basket of textiles, probably selling fabric or mending services. Her face is tired, her posture stiff. She pauses near a vendor stall, strikes a deal, and keeps moving. No time for small talk. No time for rest. You think about what your own job back home would feel like, without a chair air conditioning or even a reliable lunch break. Then you look at this city pulsing with labor and realize Rome is a machine, and you're either part of it or crushed beneath it. Your own limbs are begging for a break, but there's still no rest. You pass by a carpenter hammering together a crude door frame, then a group of tanners stirring animal hides in vats of urine. Yes, urine. Tanning leather involved ammonia, and the Romans were big fans of recycling bodily fluids. Fringe detail. Some neighborhoods even had jars placed on corners where passers-by were encouraged to donate their pee. Public urinals were, let's say, a different experience. By the time you reach the edge of the Subura district, the city's working-class underbelly, you're limping again. Narrow alleys, noisy taverns, the ever-present scent of roasting meat and moldy wood. A group of women pass by, chatting rapidly, laughing, carrying baskets of greens and herbs. One of them looks at you, smiles, then whispers something to her friend. They giggle. You wonder if it's the tunic. It's probably the tunic. As the sun dips low behind the rooftops, the shadows lengthen and the mood shifts. Work doesn't stop in Rome. It simply changes flavor. The bakers start prepping dough for tomorrow. The night watch sharpen their blades, and the thieves. They stretch limber up and get ready for their version of a shift. You lean against a wall and finally let yourself admit it, you wouldn't survive here. Not a day. Not even close. And there are still so many hours to go. The sun is sinking, casting a honey-colored glow across Rome's rooftops, but the day isn't winding down, it's just shifting gears. You've made it through public toilets, grimy stews, and employment that smells faintly of despair. Now your tired feet carry you towards something you've been both dreading. And let's be honest, a little curious about the gladiator games. No, you're not here as a spectator. You're here because you foolishly expressed admiration for the life of a gladiator in front of the wrong person. And somehow that joke got you roped into just a peek behind the scenes of the Ludus, the gladiator training school. It starts as a tour. It doesn't end that way. You're marched through a stone corridor that smells like iron-old sweat and the copper tang of blood. A guard eyes you up and down, chuckles darkly, and opens a gate. Inside, men stripped to the waist, bruised, sweating, swinging wooden practice swords, with the urgency of people who know failure means dying for someone else's entertainment. You're handed a dull blade and nudged forward. Just try it, someone says. You lift the weapon, it's heavier than it looks awkward in your hand. A stocky trainer barks orders in clipped Latin and gestures at your posture. He whacks your shin with a stick for emphasis. You're trying to stand straight, but you're tired, underfed, and your arms feel like noodles. It's not going well. A wiry young man named Marcellus steps up to spar with you. He's probably 17, maybe 18, and his eyes have that glassy focus you've only ever seen in extreme athletes or people who've stopped caring whether they survive the week. He doesn't smile. He doesn't speak. He lunges. You yelp, stumble back, and barely block the strike. He follows up with a tap to your ribs that knocks the wind out of you. Turns out being a gladiator isn't all glamour and dramatic thumbs-up moments. It's mostly bruises, blisters, cracked ribs, and sleeping on straw beside the same men you may have to fight tomorrow. They eat beans barley and drink vinegar water, not exactly the diet of champions. Fringe fact gladiators were called hordiari, or barley men, because of their high-carb, low-meat meals. Built more like sumo wrestlers than bodybuilders, they needed bulk to absorb slashes without dying instantly. Useful, but far from glamorous. You watch as another group runs drills. Shield up, slash down, pivot parry. Over and over, until their muscles tremble and the trainer yells at them to keep going. One guy vomits and keeps moving. There's no sympathy here, no breaks, and no illusion of escape. Gladiators were often slaves, criminals, or desperate volunteers. Once you're in, you don't leave, unless you've survived long enough to buy your freedom or died trying. Historians still argue whether gladiators were respected celebrities or disposable tools. The answer, probably both. To the crowd, they were living symbols of Roman power. To their owners, they were assets, investments trained to bleed on cue. You standing there with jelly legs and a dull blade are neither. The trainer finally waves you off, muttering something that sounds like hopeless. You sit down on a wooden bench, shaking. Marcellus tosses you a flask of water. You drink. It tastes faintly of smoke and metal, but you're too thirsty to care. For a moment, there's quiet. The kind of quiet where you feel your heartbeat in your ears and your bones protest every twitch. You glance toward the far wall where armor is stacked, some dented, some blood-stained. Helmets with slits for eyes. Gauntlets that have clearly been used in anger. Each piece has a story, and none of them end with a parade. Then you hear the distant roar of a crowd. The Colosseum is hosting games tonight. Someone's fighting. Maybe someone from this very school. You feel it in your gut, that deep primal noise humans make when they watch violence dressed up as spectacle. It rolls across the rooftops like thunder. You wonder if Marcellus will be in the arena tomorrow. You don't ask. You don't want to know. You're escorted out, legs wobbly, brain fried. The sun is gone now, replaced by torches and flickering oil lamps that cast long shadows on the stone walls. You walk in silence, each step echoing down the narrow streets. The din from the Colosseum continues cheering, shouting a horn, signaling another match. You picture the sand, the blood, the emperor's gaze. You feel sick. As you reach the main road again, a vendor tries to sell you a carved figurine of Hercules. For strength, he says, you pass. You don't feel strong. You feel small. And then suddenly you're in a crowd again. People spilling out of the Colosseum gates, chattering about the evening's show. A man tells his wife that the retiarius didn't stand a chance. A boy reenacts a trident throw with wild enthusiasm. You catch a glimpse of someone carrying a soaked rag, probably a blood-soaked souvenir. The boy laughs. You don't. You slip away back into the smaller alleys where no one's talking about death like it's sport. You pass a dog sniffing a heap of garbage. A woman sweeping her doorstep glances up at you, frowns slightly, then continues. The torchlight flickers. Your arms still ache. You lean against a wall, and let yourself slide down to the ground muscles, too tired to argue. Your breathing is shallow, your heart rate slower now, but your mind is reeling. You wanted to see the glory of Rome. You got it. You saw the beast beneath the marble. No one warns you that glory smells like sweat and copper, that heroism comes with splinters and bruises, that entertainment can look like execution if you're standing too close to the sand. You close your eyes just for a second and hear the roar again. Distant echoing, but still there. Rome doesn't sleep, not when there's blood in the sand. Your back is pressed against cool stone, the night air finally soft enough to breathe without tasting dust. And for a few moments, you almost forget how sore your legs are. But Rome, as ever, refuses to let you rest. You're stirred by the sound of sandals tapping rhythmically across the cobblestones. Two women pass by, their silhouettes draped in long stolas heads, held high beneath finely woven veils. They move quickly, speaking in hushed Latin, careful not to draw attention. That's when it hits you. You haven't thought much about what it's like to be a woman in this empire. Let's say just for a moment you were born a Roman woman. From your first breath, your life wouldn't belong to you. Legally, you're a child, even at 40. Your father has power over you, and when not, if you marry, that power transfers to your husband. You don't get to vote. You don't get to hold public office. You don't even get your own name, not really. Women are often named after their father's clan. If you're lucky, you're Julia or Cornelia. If you're less lucky, you're Julia the Younger, or Julia the Youngest, or Julia number 3. The ideal Roman woman is chaste, silent, obedient, and above all, invisible, which is ironic because Roman fashion for women demands the opposite. The stola long and layered, sometimes stitched with expensive dyed wool or imported silk, weighed down with belts and brooches, and a veil to top it all off. The look says, yes, I have money, and no, I am not allowed to enjoy it, unsupervised. You picture yourself draped in heavy fabric under the Roman sun, forbidden from going out alone, forbidden from speaking too loudly, forbidden from existing without purpose. Women could own property in rare cases, but always under the oversight of a guardian. Even motherhood, a supposed pillar of Roman femininity, was dangerous. No antibiotics, no anesthesia, no concept of hygiene. Just hope, prayer, and maybe a midwife with a dull knife and a strong stomach. Historians still argue whether Roman women had more freedom than their Greek counterparts. Some point to powerful matriarchs who influenced politics behind the scenes: Livia Agrippina, Julia Domna. Others say those women were exceptions, not the rule. Walking Rome as a woman meant constant calculation: when to speak, when to look away, when to disappear entirely. And then there's marriage. Most girls were wed off around age 12 to 14 sometimes, to men twice their age. Love wasn't the point. Status was. Families treated daughters like assets, to be leveraged alliances to be forged. If you're lucky, your husband isn't cruel. If you're less lucky, he treats you like another servant, one that's expected to smile, bear children, and never talk back. You pass by a shop selling cosmetics powder made from chalk, or lead rouge from crushed berries, eyeliner from soot. It smells oddly familiar until you remember the lead. Romans didn't just dab it on, they caked their faces with it. Fringe fact elite women often use crocodile dung as a skin cream. Yes, you heard that right. There's glamour, and then there's pure commitment. Nearby, a woman argues with a vendor over the price of a scarf. Her voice is sharp, her tone commanding. She catches you watching and meets your gaze with a mix of pride and warning. She walks off, victorious, veil fluttering like a battle flag. You think maybe not all Roman women were quiet. Maybe some had teeth. But even strength came with risk. A woman who spoke too freely was labeled immodesta, shameless. A woman who sought education suspicious. A woman who dressed too richly morally questionable. And if a woman strayed from her marriage vows, the punishment wasn't just social, it was often physical. Exile, stripping of property, public shame. Men, of course, were given more flexibility. You keep walking and pass what looks like a school. Boys sit on stools reciting poetry, while a stern teacher holds a long stick. No girls. Girls are taught at home how to spin, sew, smile, how to serve a meal without looking their husband in the eye too long. Your chest tightens. In a quiet courtyard, you spot a woman lighting a small oil lamp before a household shrine. She places a flower beside a clay figure, whispers something probably to Vesta, the goddess of hearth and home, and then turns away. That tiny moment of devotion carries more power than anything you've seen all day. Despite everything, Roman women found ways to carve out meaning. In rituals, in small rebellions, in love sometimes forbidden. You pass a lupanar, a brothel. You try not to look, but your curiosity wins. Inside, oil lamps cast soft light on painted frescoes and curtained rooms. The women here wear makeup thicker than armor and smiles sharper than blades. Most are slaves. Their freedom a price few clients could afford. And yet some still manage to laugh. Some flirt. Some whisper to each other when the men leave. Survival takes many forms. Outside, a group of men stumble by laughing too loud, drunk on sour wine and self-importance. One whistles. You tense. Just for a second, just enough to remember that fear has a different rhythm here, even at night, even for those who walk confidently. Rome is loud, Rome is golden. But for women, Rome is also a maze of silence and survival. You walk past another group, two women with their arms linked deep in quiet conversation. They glance at you, curious, not hostile, just wondering if you understand, if you see what they're forced to hide in plain sight. You keep walking. And maybe, just maybe you do. The night deepens, but sleep still feels like a distant luxury. Your feet are sore, your head is spinning, and your stomach somehow is threatening rebellion again. The flickering torchlight illuminates the outlines of buildings, alleyways, shrines, and shadows. And then, just when you think the worst might be over, you see a line of men waiting to enter one of the city's most infamous public latrines. You're curious. Also, you're desperate. Nature calls, and it's not leaving a voicemail. You follow the crowd and step into a stone chamber that smells like it has never smelled good, even on its best day. The room is filled with low stone benches, lining the walls, each with holes cut into them. No stalls, no doors, no privacy. Just a communal space to sit side by side with strangers and do your business. The floor is slick with something you don't want to identify, and somewhere in the corner water trickles faintly, probably from a clogged gutter. You pause at the entrance, questioning your life choices, but there's no going back now. A man finishes his turn, and without missing a beat, grabs the tersorium. A communal sponge on a stick dips it in the water channel running below the benches, and gives it a quick shake before placing it back for the next victim. It's horrifying. You stare at it like it might bite you. Yes, the Romans had plumbing aqueducts, even sewer systems like the Cloaca Maxima, but let's not romanticize it. The system kinda worked when it wasn't clogged, collapsed, or home to rats. Historians still argue whether Roman sanitation was truly advanced or just a glorified death trap with running water. Either way, you're holding your breath and praying your immune system is paying attention. You sit. You regret. You survive. When you finally escape that damp chamber of existential regret, the air outside feels like a blessing. You suck in a full breath and promise yourself you'll never take a modern bathroom for granted again. Ever. You wander back toward the heart of the city, weaving through dim alleyways, where the only sounds are your own footsteps and the occasional scurry of something that may or may not have a tail. Somewhere nearby, a drunk is singing. Badly. The words slur into something about Bacchus and borrowed sandals. You pause at a corner where a broken fountain trickles over cracked marble. You take a sip, risky yes, but you're thirsty. The water tastes faintly metallic, and that old fear returns lead. Roman aqueducts were marvels of engineering, no doubt, but many of the pipes were made from lead, fringe fact. Some scholars suggest that widespread lead exposure might have contributed to mental decline among the Roman elite. Imagine hosting a dinner party while slowly poisoning everyone you know. Cheers, and that's not even the only danger. You glance at the building across the street 3 stories high, sagging like a cake left out in the sun. These are the infamous insulae, Rome's apartment blocks for the working class. Built fast and cheap with wooden supports, flammable insulation, and a charming habit of collapsing without warning. Fires were common, so were cave-ins. In fact, renters rarely stayed on the upper floors if they had a choice. It was cheaper, yes, but also a lot closer to the gods if you fell through the floor in your sleep. You hear a creak, followed by a sharp snap, and instinctively look up. Nothing. Just your imagination or not. You walk a little faster. At the edge of a square, you see a group of men crouched near a wall playing tally knucklebones. It's an ancient gambling game involving small animal bones tossed like dice. They're deep in concentration, exchanging coins and insults. One man looks up, eyes you, then waves you over with a grin. You shake your head. Gambling is everywhere here, legal, popular, and often dangerous. Lose the wrong bet and you might find yourself owned rather than indebted. Suddenly, a dog barks nearby, sharp and close. You freeze, not because of the dog, but because of the man sprinting around the corner. He barrels past you, clutching a sack, and disappears down a side alley. Moments later, 2 guards appear, Roman vigils, the city's closest thing to a police force. They shout something you don't understand, glance at you, and keep running. You exhale slowly. Rome at night is a different creature. More unpredictable, more primal. The wealthy retreat into their fortified villas. The poor linger on the streets. Crime stirs. Fires spark. You stick to lit paths, trying to look like someone who belongs, someone who knows where they're going, even though you absolutely don't. You pass another public latrine and give it the wide berth it deserves. Then a bakery. Then a statue of Minerva, goddess of wisdom, her marble gaze fixed on the moon. You pause and whisper a thank you. Not for anything in particular. Just for surviving this long. And then, just when you're sure you've seen it all, you stumble across a small courtyard where people are gathered around a well. Not drawing water, but praying. It's not an official temple, just a gathering. A man holds a lantern, a woman burns incense. Someone hums a melody you don't recognize. The air here feels different, soft, reverent. You step closer and see offerings of bread figs and small coins placed around the well's base. You don't know what god they're honoring, and they don't seem to care. You feel welcome. Fringe religions thrived in Rome. Beyond the official pantheon, countless cults existed, some from Egypt, others from Persia, Gaul, or far-flung provinces. Mystery rites, secret meetings, personal salvation promised in exchange for loyalty ritual and often complete secrecy. Historians still argue whether these cults destabilized the empire or filled a spiritual vacuum left by a crumbling old order. Either way, they were real, and tonight you see one up close. You leave the courtyard with something like peace lingering at your heels. Not comfort, not safety, just quiet. A soft pause in the endless roar of Rome. Then a shout pierces the night, followed by laughter. You duck down an alley and keep walking. You're beyond tired now. The kind of tired that sinks into your bones, turns your thoughts slow and syrupy. The kind of tired where your eyelids get heavy even while you're still on your feet. But rest isn't easy to find in Rome, not for someone like you. And especially not tonight, when the city seems to be humming with an energy you can't quite place. You cross into a quieter quarter, and that's when you hear it low, chanting, rhythmic drumming, a language you don't recognize. You pause. Another religious gathering, stubbornness or something stranger. You move closer cautiously, keeping to the shadows. Around a corner in the back garden of what looks like a private home, you see them. Hooded figures circling a fire pit, eyes closed, lips moving in unison. On the ground in front of them lies a carved bull's head. A symbol, maybe Mithras or Dionysus, or some fringe deity only this little circle believes in. You've stumbled into the heart of Rome's spiritual underground. The empire officially favors the old gods. Jupiter, Mars, Venus, all the usual suspects, but the truth is messier. The further Rome stretched across continents, the more gods it absorbed. Some temples became hybrids, mixing Roman deities with foreign rites. Some gods changed names, merged with others, or were simply repurposed to match imperial propaganda. Historians still argue whether this made Rome more tolerant or more unstable. Tonight, it just makes it feel like a spiritual circus. You duck back into the alley before they see you. It's not illegal to worship something strange, not yet at least. But some cults are viewed with suspicion. The early Christians, for example, are just starting to make waves, quietly gathering in private homes, whispering about resurrection, forgiveness, and a single God. That's dangerous talk in an empire built on many gods, many temples, and a very firm belief in divine hierarchy. You keep moving, mind spinning with what you've seen. As you emerge into a wider street, something feels different. The air buzzes. People are running, not in a panic, but with urgency. You grab one by the arm. He shrugs you off but shouts back, "Barbarians!" Then he disappears into the crowd. Wait. What you follow the tide of people as they press toward the city gates, toward the outer walls. The torches are brighter here. Guards rush past in formation, sandals slapping stone shields on their backs, spears clutched tight. Someone shouts orders from a tower. You strain to see what's happening. Far beyond the walls, just visible in the moonlight, is a line of movement. Riders, banners, the glint of weapons. You're not sure if it's the Parthians, or the Visigoths, or some angry local tribe tired of taxes and Roman arrogance. But they're here, and the guards are not relaxed about it. For all its glory, Rome isn't invincible. You've already seen how fragile life is for individuals. Now you're seeing how fragile the empire can be. One raid, one breach, one leader who miscalculates, and the illusion cracks. Fringe fact. Some Roman generals intentionally let provinces suffer so they could ride in later and play savior. Politics even in war. You step back from the crowd and lean against a wall, watching as the guards pull the gates closed, steel them with thick beams, and man the towers with archers. It's probably a false alarm. Rome itself, the capital, is rarely touched. But you feel the tremor beneath the city's stone skin. Because this moment, this nervous electric stillness, reveals a deeper truth. Rome is always on edge. Always expecting the next invasion, the next uprising, the next scandal in the Senate that might tip the whole thing sideways. The empire is massive, but its grip is tight, and tight things tend to snap. The people milling around you talk in hushed tones. One man clutches his daughter close. Another mutters about past raids. A woman offers a prayer to Mars, tracing a symbol in the air. You take a breath and step away, heart pounding faster than you'd like. This is too much. You just wanted to see a bathhouse. Now you've seen the edge of war. You retreat into the belly of the city once more, hoping for calm. But the mood has shifted. You pass a group of slaves whispering to each other, eyes darting. They've heard too. Some might be thinking about escape. In moments of confusion, boundaries blur. You pause near a statue of Janus, the two-faced god of beginnings and endings. One face looks forward. One face looks back. You feel caught between them. This place, this empire, is everything and nothing at once. Beautiful and brutal. Civilized and savage. It welcomes you in with columns and fountains, then reminds you with blood and chains who's really in charge. You keep walking. The torchlight fades behind you. Somewhere someone sings a lullaby. Somewhere else someone sharpens a blade. You think about home, about modern life, about how much you've taken for granted. A roof, a meal, a lock on the door. Tonight the empire feels like it's breathing down your neck. And you're not sure how many breaths you have left. You slip away from the wall and blend back into the dark, narrow arteries of the city where torches don't always reach, and the silence feels heavier than any sound. You're hoping to disappear to escape the tension of the city gates, the whispers of barbarians at the edge of collapse. But Rome has other plans. A sharp voice cuts through the night. Another. Then a crash. You freeze in place. Ahead, a group of men are arguing outside a tavern. Their robes are disheveled hands gesturing wildly. One of them shoves the other. A scuffle breaks out. A wine jug smashes on the cobblestones. You back up slowly, trying not to draw attention. But it's too late. Someone's seen you. Witness a man shouts. You blink. Another points. Suddenly, you're being dragged toward them, stumbling, confused. You try to protest. You try to explain. But it doesn't matter. One of the men accuses the other of assault, and now you, as the nearest bystander, are being summoned to testify. Yes, that's right. You're going to court. Rome's legal system isn't quite the marble-columned ideal you imagined. It's chaotic, performative, and most importantly, painfully biased. If you're poor, foreign, or unlucky, good luck getting justice. You're herded toward a nearby building, not a proper court, but a small magistrate's office still open to handle street disputes. Inside, a young official lounges on a chair, a bored scribe beside him, scratching notes onto wax tablets. Your accuser and the other man begin yelling at each other immediately. You stand awkwardly, trying to disappear, trying to remember any Latin word that might help. The magistrate waves for silence and turns to you. He asks something fast and sharp. You freeze. Non intellego, you say weakly. I don't understand. His eyes narrow. He doesn't like that. There's some hurried whispering between the men. One of them claims you're lying. The other says you're clearly an outsider. The magistrate sighs, dramatically scratches something onto a tablet, and waves a hand. The men disperse. You're free, but not exactly relieved. That brush with Roman justice felt more like a coin toss than a search for truth. Historians still debate how fair Rome's legal system truly was. On paper, yes, citizens had rights, courts, legal representation. But in practice, wealth, status, and connections often mattered more than law. Trials could be swayed by bribery threats or just a really good toga. As you step back outside, you pass a man in chains being led by 2 guards. His expression is blank, resigned. He might have stolen something, or insulted the wrong official, or just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Punishments vary wildly: fines, beatings, exile, even execution. And it doesn't take much. Rome's not big on warnings. You walk quickly now. The idea of accidentally offending someone into dragging you into court again is more than your brain can handle. You duck into an alleyway that seems familiar until it doesn't. The walls lean inward, the street narrows, and the shadows thicken. Then out of nowhere, a sharp tug on your tunic. You spin. A hand darts for your coin pouch. You grab it just in time. The thief, a boy maybe 12, hisses and bolts. You shout, but no one comes. No one cares. The night belongs to people like him. You move faster, heart-pounding hand clenched around your pouch now like it contains your soul. You pass a patrol of vigils, the night watchmen, but they barely glance at you. They're carrying clubs and buckets, half firefighters, half security. Rome burns often, and when it does, it spreads fast. They say Nero fiddled while the city burned, though historians argue that detail might be fiction. What's not fiction is that Roman neighborhoods were often one spark away from catastrophe. A tavern door swings open nearby, spilling light and laughter into the street. You glance inside, tables filled with workers, gamblers, a musician with a crooked lyre. You think about stepping in just for a moment. But the smell of sweat and sour wine reminds you there's no rest here. Not for you. Instead, you wander back toward the core of the city, hoping for peace, for safety, for a miracle. Instead, you're met by another crowd. This time it's not chaos, it's a procession. Torches raised high chants, echoing men in ceremonial garb, leading a sacred bull toward a small temple. A sacrifice. You stand at the edge of the road and watch transfixed. The bull walks calmly, too calmly. It doesn't know what's coming. A whisper runs through the crowd, something about omens, about needing favor from the gods. You feel a chill. Rome is rational when it wants to be, but it's also deeply superstitious. Every decision, every voyage, every marriage starts with a ritual, a sign, a reading of entrails. That's not metaphor. They actually read entrails. The bull disappears behind the temple gate. You hear a low rumble of drums. Then nothing. You walk away before the blade falls. You're drained. You've seen justice, punishment, theft, fear, and worship all within the same few streets. Rome is a kaleidoscope of contradictions. It's advanced and brutal, orderly, and chaotic, God-fearing and power-hungry. And yet, it still works. Somehow. You finally find yourself back near the apartment block where your day began. The insulae loom above you, dark windows watching like tired eyes. You step inside, climb the creaky stairs, and duck into the same cramped room. Nothing has changed except you. You sit on the edge of the straw mattress, aching filthy and overwhelmed. You're not sure what hurt more, the gladiator training the baths, the stew, or the crushing weight of powerlessness that clings to everything in this city. You lie down staring at the ceiling. Somewhere outside, a baby cries. A dog barks. Someone plays a pipe. The city lives on restless, relentless, and you finally understand. Rome doesn't care if you survive. Morning returns with no warning. Just a dull light slipping through the crooked window and the groan of carts outside already on their daily mission to clog the streets. You blink, sore, stiff, your body feeling like it's aged 20 years overnight. No alarm, no warm bed, no soft linens. Just straw poking your back and the gentle perfume of mildew body odor and something vaguely fishy wafting through the wooden cracks. You've barely slept. You're not sure you really did. And yet the city is moving. You hear it before you even stand up. Footsteps on stone hooves against dust vendors warming their voices for the day's barrage of shouting. Rome wakes up like a creature uncurling, hungry, indifferent, and loud. You shuffle outside, limbs, aching skin, sticky with the ghost of yesterday. The first thing you notice is the heat. Not blazing, not yet, but persistent. It clings to you. It sinks into your bones. And the smell. Oh, the smell. A pungent blend of manure, fish sauce, body grease, crushed herbs, and hot stone. You take one breath and immediately regret it. Your stomach protests. Of course it does. You've put it through everything from ancient fast food to gladiator drills to questionable wine, and now it's reminding you who's boss. You managed to choke down a crust of bread left over from yesterday, hard as marble but passable when dipped in watered-down wine. The same wine people have been drinking for generations. Some to relax. Some because the water might actually be worse. You turn a corner and instantly jump back. A man is vomiting in the gutter. He looks up, gives a nod, wipes his mouth, and keeps walking like nothing happened. Rome, you're realizing, is very used to bodily functions happening in public. Maybe that's why no one blinks as a woman dumps a chamber pot from her third-floor window a few doors down. You sidestep. You're learning, and then comes the fever. It's not dramatic at first. Just a chill, a tremble in your hands, a little fuzz around the edges of your vision. You think maybe it's hunger or dehydration, or just the exhaustion of being an accidental time traveler. But deep down you know. Something's brewing, something your 21st century immune system isn't prepared for. You try to walk it off. Bad idea. Your knees feel like jelly. Your vision swims. The streets warp slightly at the corners, and still Rome moves around you, unbothered. The city doesn't stop for weakness. You slump onto a shaded step beside a statue of Mercury, his winged sandals chipped, his smirk eternal. You close your eyes for a second, just 1 second, and someone kicks your foot. You open them to see a guard scowling.